Have you ever admired someone from afar and just knew you would hit it off as friends? Well, that's exactly how I felt when I stumbled upon our next guest on social media. She's fierce, wicked smart, courageous, and beautiful, truly the whole package. And today she's here with us for what promises to be a fun and engaging conversation. Welcome to the Amy Robbins Show, where you never really know what we're going to talk about because I bring on people that I find fascinating to discuss topics that spark my curiosity in hopes that it sparks your curiosity as well. Our guest today is the remarkable Dr. Sheila Nazarian, and you might know her from her hit Netflix series Skin Decision. Recognize her as a commentator on Fox News, or perhaps she's even been your trusted surgeon if you visited her practice in Beverly Hills. Dr. Nazarian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Amy. So nice to be here.
Well, thank you for hanging out and dealing with our technical difficulties. You said you were scrolling Instagram while we were figuring out our mic issues. I'm dying to know what fascinating things are popping up in your feed as a plastic surgeon. I'm sure they're very different than the algorithm that puts things in my feed. So
I think our feeds are probably exactly the same, actually. It's funny because even my kids' feeds have started to sync with my feed, and they're 3 teenagers. But no, I mean, my feed on my main page, the Dr. Sheila Nazarian, and on X is basically anti-Semitism, Israel updates, Trump, Elon Musk, the Epstein files.
I'm so wait.
I know.
Okay. What are that? They just handed these files over to 15 independent journalists that I've been seeing. I'm so jealous that half of them are my friends. I know them very well, so I'm very excited for them. But oh my goodness, what are you expecting to hear? Are you expecting to be shocked by anything in those files?
Yes, I think there's going to be a lot of shock and awe. I think there's going to be a lot of arrests. I went through some of the names that were released today, and a lot of them say redacted, and I just one immediate question is why redact? But I think it's really interesting also that they gave the names and the files to independent journalists. Now, why is that? What is the state of media that they felt like they could not give these to mainstream media? It's just when Elon Musk came out on X and said you are the media. They are. Yeah. It's true. They are the media.
Well, I think we all saw it during the last election that it's like the people that are running legacy media right now, they've not gotten the memo yet that they really have lost a lot of their power. But I think they're starting to get the picture here. And I just thought, how cool is this that I feel like President Trump is being one of the most transparent presidents that we have ever had.
What a time to be alive.
I'm just wondering when the next time is I'm going to stop being shocked that he actually delivers on something that he promises. And, the Epstein files are no different. And it's not just him. It's actually the people that he's putting in as the heads of these departments that are also coming out and being like, well, I said I'm going to do this. This is what he campaigned on. And they're actually following through with it, too. It's like they feel very empowered by who's at the top to do their job and to get it done. So it's refreshing.
Right, and I think that the method in which they're doing it is also very telling. You know how in the beginning of the Gaza-Israel war in 2021, they sort of bombarded a bunch of missiles trying to see and test the Iron Dome, right? And see, well, if we throw 50 missiles, will the Iron Dome be able to get all of them? If we throw 100, if we throw 200, if we throw 1,000. So I think Trump learned from his first term that if he just comes out with 1 or 2 things at a time, they're just going to block it up in court. So it's kind of like this barrage.
Yeah.
It's been like a month, so it's been this barrage method because that's the only way to get things through.
Yeah, well, and some of them seem like they were so extreme, but the media can't figure out which one they want to focus on. What things do they want to hate? What thing do they want to attack? And no, I think it's been very interesting. But okay, you bring up such a great point, the Gaza Strip. And so I did not realize you were doing so much political activism. How long have you been doing that?
It's been 4 years now. It's been 4 years. I started when my daughter was applying to high schools 4 years ago, and I went to Columbia University, so I know it's been in the news a lot, and I just knew how anti-Semitic these college campuses were. I actually stopped donating to Columbia 10 years ago because I kept telling them you have an anti-Semitism problem, and they're like, no, we don't. Look at all these beautiful things we're doing and a program with Israeli students and all of this stuff. And
What were they doing? Like, what were they
they're
telling
like,
you?
you know, exchange programs or relationship with a university in Tel Aviv where they send students there and students come here, so on and so forth. And so they kept denying it. And I just started saying, you know, hashtag Shabbat Shalom. Just like, you know, because of my Netflix show, I have a big following kind of all over. I was like, maybe some of my followers never met a Jew. Let me just normalize Judaism. That was literally like my only thing I wanted to do. And then the May 2021 conflict happened, and my colleagues, my medical colleagues were like, oh, genocide, apartheid, occupation, you know, the same 5 words basically that they always throw at Israel. And I just was like, I have way more followers than you. I'm going to speak up. And so I was posting 8 hours a day in addition to my full-time job. It was the first time in my life I've had anxiety. It was a lot. You know how it is when you're just on social media too much, but I felt like I was one of the only people speaking up and I couldn't stop. I lost a lot of followers. I think I've gained a lot too, and I don't regret it. I don't regret being authentic. I don't regret using my freedom of speech. I started getting threats. I had to learn to shoot a gun. I had to learn how to defend myself, which is, I think, how we met.
You're exactly right. Well, we'll get to that story in a minute because I just think this is so. I love hearing people's journeys about what propels them to really start taking on a completely new role that they never thought they'd, like, a world.
Never.
You're a plastic surgeon. This is not like people don't sign up to be plastic surgeons, go through that schooling to then just turn around and be a political activist and potentially put their career on the line.
Exactly.
Did those thoughts go through your head as you were starting to post? So what were you thinking?
Yes. I thought I was going to lose my entire practice. And I recently went to Christians United for Israel like a year ago, and I spoke, and Pastor Hagee's daughter, Sandy, she was interviewing me on stage, and she basically said it's like the story of Abraham. You know how Abraham prayed for hundreds of years for a son. He finally gets a son, and God asks him to sacrifice his son. And so that's kind of how I felt. I worked, and I studied until the age of 33 to become a plastic surgeon, and I've been in practice now 11 years. And I was willing to give it all up because it was that important to me, and I said, you know what, I did everything I set out to do. I accomplished everything I said I was going to do. I have my family, I have my career, I did it. And now I'm going to let it all go if that's what it takes.
Wow. What were your kids' reactions to all of this while you were going through this? Were you trying to protect them and keep them from knowing what was going on? Or
no, I mean, it was all over. We live in a very, the Persian Jewish community, we escaped socialism. We're all first generation. So it's not like, oh, my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. It happened to us. I escaped on the back of a truck. I left socialism. Me. And so for the community that's been in Los Angeles now for probably, 40 years, maybe a little bit more, it's very fresh and it smells the same and it sounds the same. And, I can see UCLA from where I'm sitting right now. And when the flashbangs were going off on college campuses, Westwood, the area of UCLA, they call it Tarangelis because it's all Persians. Mm-hmm. And all of the, Persians were saying this is exactly what it sounded like in Iran pre-revolution because it started on the college campuses. And then, Amy, we found out all these $500 REI tents that these, pro-Hamas protesters, they were being funded by Iran. Mm-hmm. And so, and who funded Iran? We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so you've got this community that experienced the same thing as you did. Did you end up in Los Angeles for that reason because you knew that there was a community there for you, or did that just happen to be?
So we were the last of our family to leave Iran because my father's mom, my grandmother, was older, so we had to get her out first. So the rest of my family had already either gone to New York or LA. And we stood up, we were in Pakistan for 3 months waiting for visas. Then we were in Vienna for 3 months waiting for visas and finally came to the US. And first we went to New York and stayed with my grandma. I think winter hit. My parents were like, no. And then so we went to LA. We were living in a 2-bedroom apartment, 8 of us, with my cousin's family.
Wow. And, you know, when you go through something like that, like there are, obviously you guys are escaping something. I mean, like y'all are a true refugee. Were you coming over here like with refugee status? Is that
Yeah,
how
so
you were
it was,
getting
yeah,
your visas?
my parents seeked asylum. I was actually a citizen because I was born in New York right before the revolution on vacation. And then when my family returned to Iran, obviously, and they had, you know, asylum status and refugee status. They were afraid for their lives. And an organization called HIAS helped us get out.
Wow. Well, yeah, because I mean, there's obviously so much going on now with the border, and people are, you know, like absolutely do know that there are people that are actually seeking asylum, and then I am always curious to know, like, well, what are your thoughts on the other people that just easily get to come over here, and there's no vetting, there's no visa process, there's no waiting. I mean, what has that been a fight that you've jumped into as well to say, like, look, this is just not
I
fair?
just think for me, it's more common sense. You know, you have to vet people. You have to know who's coming here. That's just, we know, you and I both know with that many people coming and not being vetted, it's impossible for us to know everybody who's here in the country. We know that we don't know who's here in the country, and I think that's extremely dangerous, and no other country allows that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's just common sense. It's not even an empathy question. Of course, we should allow people to come to the U.S. That benefit the U.S. and that also truly, you know, we are doing an altruistic act by letting them live. Like my father was told that he was on the list, and if he doesn't get out, they're going to kill him. You know,
Wow.
and having lived through that, seeing all these celebrities when Trump was elected being like, I'm going to leave this country. I'm like, no, you're not, because you're not actually afraid.
Yeah.
I know
And where
what
are you
it's
gonna
like
go?
to actually be afraid.
Yeah, and they never actually say like where they're gonna go. That
Yeah,
would
where are you
be a
gonna
lot
go?
better, because really, if it was a lot better, I'm sure they would leave. Okay, you said something really interesting, that it took you this long to get to the point in your life where you had to learn how to shoot a gun. Why? What got you to that point? A, were you anti-gun before, or?
I don't think I even had the opportunity, Amy, to think about it because I was pregnant 3 times in general surgery and plastic surgery residency, working 80 hours a week, sleeping in the hospital every 3rd night. So I was not thinking about much. I had never voted. I had never been in politics. I never, like, totally, I was just in the hospital or at home sleeping or giving birth. Literally. So it wasn't even something that, you know, I had a chance to think about guns or no guns, but like I knew that if my son played violent video games, it wasn't good for him. So I didn't even want him playing shooting video games, right? But when I started getting the threats and somebody sent a rotted pig's hoof to my office from New Jersey, I got calls from these idiots that literally use their cell phones. Like, I ran your number. I know like your homeowners association number. Like, you're such an idiot. That's how like emboldened these people are. They're not even using like a burner phone. They're actually using their own like cell phone.
Right.
So, you know, I had to get private security, and it's very expensive. And so it took me about 9 months to get my CCW. And once I did, I didn't need the private security anymore. So for me, it was, again, it was just, it made sense.
Oh, I actually didn't realize that you got your CCW. So it was I credit my little sister for, I mean, I actually watched Skin Decisions. Then my little sister sends me your, you know, she's out there in Los Angeles. She's an actress, and she sends me your profile. She's like, you have to send some of your Alexo leggings to Dr. Nazarian. She is like my favorite person in the entire world. And I'm like, wait, who? And I look you up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I was like, but does she carry a gun? Does she have concealed carry? They're in Los Angeles. It's not really that easy to carry a firearm. She's like, no, just send her, like, just send her stuff. And I'm so glad that I did, and I'm so interested, you know, just in knowing there was a lot of people in California. I got phone calls from so many people. A lot of it dealt with COVID issues and riots that were going on, and people were suddenly realizing, especially in a place like Los Angeles, that the cops are not coming to protect you. You're really relying on yourself.
Well, I mean, they defunded the police, right? So they did that. And then, they were spray painting, kill the rich, kill the Jews. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, like legitimate reasons that you would need to be your first line of defense. But I think for so many people, they don't ever think about their safety until their safety is threatened. And I think that's just like a natural inclination for so many people. But the number of my friends who would have identified as being very anti-gun did go and try to get a firearm at the gun store and realized very quickly that, oh, there are background checks that you have to get in California. And, oh, I can't take my gun home. I have to wait 10 days to get my firearm. People were astonished. They had absolutely no idea, but they realized very quickly that the bad guys had guns and then they weren't able to actually protect themselves. It was crazy.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, the person that helps me, choose and like, oh, would be a good like size for you. He told me that after all the riots started happening and the spray painting that was happening in this area, he was like 90% of the people I'm helping right now are Jewish.
Wow.
So, and in New York too, a lot of the physicians that I know carry.
Well, and talk about a hard place in New York City to get a firearm. So, well, I want to talk a little bit about what was your experience like doing a show? Was the show your idea, or did the production company come to you and say, hey, we want to cast you in this show? Talk a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah, so I always wanted a show. I did ballet and hip hop for years. I was in theater. I was on the dance team. And so I always, was used to being on stage. And I always wanted a show. I remember when I was almost graduating plastic surgery, one of my attendings was like, so what's the plan? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, I'm going to have a show. And he's like, you go do that. And so I was actually doing like a sizzle or a pitch, I guess. With remember that show that came out on E, like the female version of Dr. 90210?
Yes.
Yes.
I was. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, here's the tea on that. So I was actually in the original cast of that,
No
and
way.
I was under contract with them for like a year, and I remember I was like on a vacation, and they called and they're like, "We're not going to pick it up. We're not going to do it." And I was like totally devastated. But one of the producers on that show was working on this show, and so he said, "Let's go get Nazarian for this show." And so that's how that happened. And then when E found out that Netflix was doing my show, they revived the other show. Of course.
And how many seasons did you do?
We did one, 8 episodes. We got nominated for People's Choice Award. We got nominated for an Emmy. So pretty cool. And I think the format that I learned a lot about kind of what it is that makes a show for Netflix versus TV. And so I think the goals of Netflix changed a little bit, but I would love another show, and I have an idea I'm going to pitch soon, but it was a lot of work, Amy. I felt like a resident again. I mean, up at 4:30 in the morning, hair and makeup, 3 days a week, in addition to my kids, in addition to my job. But it was 3.5, 4 months of filming, and it was totally worth it. I loved it.
Oh, absolutely. Do you foresee any challenges given kind of you being in the spotlight now for your political activism? Do you see any challenges with getting
You
a
mean
new
my
show?
first pin post being with Trump?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but then maybe not. Maybe we're living in a completely different like culture shift right now, where it's actually very in vogue to be a MAGA supporter or a Trump supporter. I'm seeing.
I don't think in Hollywood it's yet. We're yet there. I think there's a lot of closeted people who I talk to that, or people who just changed their minds a little bit or softened up. I see a lot of people walking around in MAGA hats here and would not have seen that 6 months ago.
No way.
But you basically, I think you pitch where you're welcome. So, you pitch to networks that appreciate your insight.
Well, you're welcome to pitch it to Play TV. We would love to we would love to have you on this platform. So, I mean, all of that is so much fun. You just have such a eclectic resume, and I
know,
that.
Which makes it worse. I feel like because Fox News has been very kind to me to bring me on to speak about like all the eclectic things, but I think. If I would have just been like activist, I'd be speaking 50 times a year, But if I would just be plastic surgeon, I'm sure I'd have a franchise of a plastic surgery chain right now. But
let's talk about plastic surgery a little bit. I don't really feel like I get to hear you talk on the plastic surgery side because
I
again,
know, it's
everything
not
that
funny.
my algorithm and my feed is you on Fox News. So, let's talk about some of the biggest trends right now that you are seeing in plastic surgery.
Surgery. I think
Okay.
the pendulum swung a lot to spa services and non-invasive, that you'd have to do like multiple treatments of something. And I don't know if it's like the Lindsay Lohan effect, but everyone is very open, I think, to surgery now, more so than 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think fat transfer to the breasts and smaller breasts are very in. I think fit and looking athletic is very in. Thank God.
Is that a surgical procedure though?
Yes,
Like, can I go
yes.
get some muscle? Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, I think people are in general, Amy, at least my patients, are very well adjusted, successful, happy people. But, they've had 3 kids or 4 kids and they're doing Pilates 5 times a week and eating well and organic, but their
Yeah.
skin's hanging off their stomach. Like, what are they
Well,
going to
do you
do?
think? Yeah, I mean, like, do you think like there's been a stigma around plastic surgery that is gone now? Like, people are just more accepting of it and they're more
I
open
think
with
they
it.
are more accepting of it. I just think that a lot of times you only notice bad plastic surgery. So if you walked past, I don't know, Jennifer Aniston, Demi Moore, a lot of these people who look amazing, you'd just be like, oh, she looks amazing. You wouldn't be like, oh, that's great plastic surgery. Like, most people don't think like that, but if they walk past someone who just looks crazy,
Yeah.
they'd be like, oh, plastic surgery's so terrible. Why would anybody
Yeah.
do that to themselves?
Well, this is going to be very controversial, but I know that a lot of people are talking about it. But what are your thoughts on breast implant illness? Is that a thing?
No, I mean, I think it's a thing. I just think causality hasn't been proven yet. For me personally, and again, this is not based on data, it's just based on my 11 years of experience. Amy, I've given every one of my patients that I've operated on my cell phone number for the last 11 years. Not one has called me and said, I have breast implant illness. Can you take these out? Not one. And they'll call me for everything else. Like, I have a rash. Can you tell me what to do? Even though, like, I did their boobs or their vagina or something.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I've always put in the smallest breast implants. So that could go 2 reasons. A, it could be silicone load. So if you have a tiny, tiny implant, your body's only seeing, this much silicone. If you have a Pamela Anderson implant, your body's seeing this much silicone. So maybe there's some correlation there, like the load. The other thing is big implants are heavy. So if you have, 500 cc's and 500 cc's, that's a liter of weight. Imagine I took a liter of milk, strapped it to your chest, tied a string around your neck, and made you walk around like that for 10 years.
Yeah.
Of course, you're going to have fatigue and brain fog and neck pain and back pain, body aches. Of course you are.
I just laugh. I mean, I just think too. I'm like going through all the symptoms that everyone lists with that. I'm like, check. And I don't have implants, but I'm like, check this. Okay, I feel like I'm experiencing.
You're like, I have fatigue. I have brain fog.
I have brain fog. I'm like, so how are we narrowing this down?
Well,
to just
there
one
hasn't
thing?
been causality, but we never want to say. I'm not, at least me. I never want to say like, oh, it doesn't exist. Like, get your head checked. Like, I think people have done that, especially to women with like menopause, for example. They're like, oh, it's just menopause, and instead of being like, well, here's some options. Let's try this. Let's try this, let's try that, let's, check your levels of this and see, if we can fix it. I think for a very long time, patients are just dismissed if we don't believe them or if we don't. So I don't want to do that at all, but I am data-based, know. And, I was just speaking to a mom of a transgender child, right? And I am one of the only plastic surgeons that have spoken up against transitioning minors. And I think it's going to be a very shameful history for my profession that we did this. So, she's like, no, my kid would have committed suicide if I didn't let them do top surgery or, remove their breasts. And I said, you know what, I'm not saying that wasn't your lived experience, but the data, 14-year data out of Europe shows that just isn't true suicidality didn't come down with 14-year data. And I was like, would you like me to send you that data? And she's like, no.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's, for me, I never want to say that somebody doesn't feel something and somebody hasn't gone through something. But again, I am a scientist. I need data in order to make broad decisions for a population.
But as a doctor, we felt, I guess I'm talking as just a person that goes to the doctor. I'm obviously not a doctor, but, a lot of us trusted that our doctors are reading data and that they are trusting. We hear this phrase, trust the science, and then there was
Never trust the science. Science is not meant to be trusted. Science is meant to be tested over and over and over again. Whoever says trust the science is lying.
Well, so okay, I mean, I guess that's a great starting point, because that's what was so scary during COVID is we didn't know who to trust. The people that we thought we were going to trust or to be very well informed, I started realizing really might not have. I don't know if they're just reading one thing that was handed down to them from the American Medical Association or what it was, but what has happened in the profession that they aren't out there doing copious amounts of research as scientists?
I'll give you another story. I was speaking to a plastic surgeon here in California that only does gender transition in minors. And I said, what about the 14-year data out of Europe? He's like, what 14-year data? I'm like, this is what you do. So I think that there's a politicization that's happened, that people just don't even want to read data that goes against what they believe to be true. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. The other thing, which I hope is not true, but probably always plays into it, is money. Follow the money. If you get $500 for doing a burst appendix surgery, but you get $10,000 for removing a minor's breasts, what is the hospital going to do?
That's something the insurance is paying for, though.
Oh, yes, it is, Amy.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, yes, it is, Amy.
I did not realize that. So wait, what type of procedures are insurances covering for that?
Any gender transition surgery, because it's a mental disorder. They categorize it as a mental disorder, and the antidote to prevent suicide, or to relieve their mental distress, is surgery.
Wow. I mean, at the end of the day, couldn't everybody claim that and get all of their...
Well, that's kind of the interesting argument that I always come back to when I have a good friend. She's been transgender for 40 years. She's an activist. And I straight up asked her, is transgenderism a mental disorder? And she said, absolutely yes. I said, I'm glad you said that, because if it's not, why is insurance paying for these surgeries? Because I know many women who've had many children who are in mental distress about their bodies. Why doesn't insurance pay for cosmetic surgery?
Yeah.
It'll pay for breast implants for a man to become a woman, but won't pay for breast implants for a woman who's lost her breasts due to nursing 5 kids. Wow. And she went from a C to an A, and they're sagging down here, and they look like deflated rocks and socks. Right?
That's a great point. I didn't realize that. Or you have such bad diastasis recti after having babies that it's killing your back. You can't
that was one of the episodes on my show. One of the women on my show, her rectus diastasis was so bad you could see her intestines moving under her skin. And you can go watch that surgery on my Netflix show. I mean, yeah, but insurance doesn't pay for rectus diastasis.
No, not at all. And maybe now it has to get classified under something else. That's just crazy. Yeah, I just had no idea. So, yeah. Well, I mean, all of this is just so. Do you have daughters, or daughter and a son? How many kids do you have?
I have 2 daughters and a son.
Okay, you have 2 daughters and a son. So my question, because I've got a son and I've got a daughter, and when you are really teaching your children to speak up and to be courageous and to stand up for what they believe in, are you doing it differently for your daughters than you are your son?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so give me your best parenting advice on
the best parenting in your children. I think the best parenting is 2 things: lead by example, because they're watching. And don't discourage them. And I see that happening a lot in my culture, because in Iran, if you said you were Jewish or if you were too loud, there were consequences. You'd be in jail, you'd get beat up, worse. And so here, I see the older Persian generation telling their kids, shh, be quiet, don't speak up, you're going to get hurt. Even in my own family, when I started speaking up, everybody was like, what are you doing? You have children, you have to protect your family. It was a big deal. So I think one thing is parents should not discourage their kids from using their freedom of speech. Like, there's consequences if you say something stupid.
Yeah.
So make sure you know what you're talking about, and make sure you educate yourself and you talk to a lot of people before you speak up. I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences if you're just acting stupid. But I always say, my parents left Iran and sacrificed everything so that I would have freedom of speech. So I'm going to practice that freedom of speech.
Was it something that you and your husband discussed prior to you starting to speak out, and what was his support like for that?
Well, I think for me, it was little by little. I didn't, I started before the worst, the May 2021 conflict happened. And so for me, it was like 10%, and then uncomfortable, and then I got comfortable, and then 10% more uncomfortable, and then I got comfortable. So it wasn't that it was just this like dam opened and the floodgates started coming. It was just a very gradual thing. And I think he was uncomfortable, and I think now he's kind of given up.
Yeah. Yeah, he just gets it. Yeah, that is amazing. Well, Dr. Nazarian, I want you to tell everybody where they can find you on social media, any upcoming projects, speaking engagements, anything that you're promoting. Just where can everybody go and follow along with your journey?
Dr. Sheila Nazarian on Instagram, spelled out Dr. Nazarian on X, and I'm about to launch a revamped version of my skincare line called Nazarian Skin. It's going to be gorgeous and beautiful. The product is the same, effective, awesomeness, but just presented in a much more Persian way.
Yeah, I love your sun glove, by the way.
Yes, very, very gold and black and
very gold and black.
Yes, very luxe. Hopefully we'll get it into
Michael Jackson, like
yes,
in the car, so
yes.
It was great.
Yes, my goal is to have it be in like every Trump hotel. I just feel like that's where it belongs.
Oh, we're putting it out there. We are putting that out there right now for you. So
yes,
it gets out there.
So that's one. And then two, I'm working on a book right now that is called Detail. Spelled DTALE, and it stands for Diversity of Thought and Life Experience. And it is an actually inclusive and acceptable form of diversity. And I'm writing this not for the states that are getting rid of their diversity statements, but I'm writing this for the organizations and the nonprofits and the universities that cannot get rid of their diversity statement. So there's been a lot of criticism of DEI, but there has never been a solution other than DEI must DIE. So this is kind of a new way of thinking about diversity through my eyes, through a person who loves America and was given a second chance here, and really appreciates what I have here.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me today. And everybody, please go and give her a follow. And if you're not back on Parler or on Play TV, we would love to get you back on.
Love it.
There as well. Yes, because Parler is back and we are not censoring people. So your message is going to get out to everybody. That's exactly why I'm doing this show. Anyone that's ever experienced censorship or suppression, shadow banning, you name it, I'm having them come on the show because I want their messages to get out to everybody. And it's growing very quickly, and so I just appreciate you taking the time to come on today and to talk with us and to share all of your wonderful wealth of knowledge that you have. So thank you so much, and the best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Amy. More power to you. Thank you.